The next speech is by Rich McDonough, and Peter Ash will give, I got that right this time, will give the objectives.
This is an out-of-manual speech. Rich is trying to get people to understand something. It's a constructive speech. He is going to start with some visual aid, and then he will drop the visual aid, then talk to us, and finally he will give a handout at the end. So that is his objective.
Thank you, Peter. We'll turn it over to Rich.
Those markers. Oh, yeah.
College you want.
Don't stop me till I get going. I feel like I'm back in class teaching again. My name is Rich McDonough, and I'm going to talk to you today about personalities and why they're important to understand. What personality style are you, and why should that be important to you? While we all have unique personalities, we can narrow them down into basically 4 categories: driver, amiable, expressive, and analytical. Now, people handle things like decision-making in different ways, whether it's conflict, stress, learning. But by being able to accurately identify somebody's personality style, you'll increase your chance and your ability to understand, communicate, learn, and possibly persuade them. So what are the 4 personality styles? There's the driver. The driver is classically the CEO, the lead attorney, the president of a bank, a military general. That would they tend to be task-oriented, very specific to the point, no nonsense. They don't like embellishments. They like to see clear projects, objectives. They don't like a lot of detail, but they want to see that you've prepared a lot in presenting to them. And they want you to get to the bottom line quickly. The next person, who's the opposite, is the amiable. These are all the people we love to be around, and they love to be around us. They're the Mary Tyler Moores, for those of you that remember those days. They're friendly, they're outgoing, they tend to be the HR directors, they could be nurses, they're social workers, and what they like is, first of all, they like harmony, friendship, they make great customer service representatives, they're team players, they don't like conflict, and they tend to be people who trust and guarantees and security is very important to them. If you're trying to sell something to somebody, they want to make sure they can return the item without any complications. Then there's the expressive type, which is what I am. These are people who like to talk. We're not as good listeners as we are talkers, but as long as we're mindful of that, that's okay. Tend to be the center of attention. They love social situations. They love to go to either parties or networking events or public speaking. They tend to be teachers, coaches, salespeople. These are the expressive people. And finally, there's the analytical type, and I'll give it a little analogy or a story to give some meat to some of this. The analytical types are the people who are very process-driven. They're the scientists, the engineers, or like my wife, they're IT specialists. They tend to be introverted, but not always. But they want to understand how the process works. I'll share a story, which was kind of actually an embarrassment. I had to brief this general one time, who was kind of an analytical driver, because you will have sprinkles of things in 2 different areas. And we were merging these 2 regulations from these 2 different divisions from all over the world, and I thought he was going to focus on the changes. And when I got up there to brief him, he said, okay, where are the regulations now? I said, oh, I dropped them off at the distribution center, Jim. And he said, okay. He said, well, when you drop them off, you know, where did they go from there? I had no idea. It's like dropping it off at the post office, you know? How do I know what the postman does behind the counters or behind the back room? But needless to say, he wanted an answer. And so he said, where did they go? I said, oh, they went to all the bases. Did you have addresses on them? Oh, yeah, they were all addressed and everything. And he said, well, where are they now? And I said, well, I assume that, just bad choice of word for an analytical, I assume that they're at the bases. He said, so you didn't verify that they received the documentation and the changes? And I said, well, no, General, but we didn't get any phone calls saying that they didn't get them. Well, the driver doesn't want you fudging. The driver wants answers, and they want them specifically. So needless to say, that's an example of an analytical type. They like process. So why is this important? When you're talking to somebody, when you're communicating to somebody, we all think from our perspective. I think in terms of I'm an expressive, and I communicate as an expressive. But really what I should be doing is reading you and trying to understand the way you think and the way you operate so that I can communicate on terms that you can relate to. So that's the main thing that I want you to take away from this in terms of the difference. Now, we all have a secondary mode under stress. So under stress, I go from being an expressive to a driver. When things go wrong, all of a sudden I become task-oriented. I need to know the bottom line. We got to get this job done. That's something to be aware of in yourself, that you will have sprinkles of all of these in your personality, but you will have a primary mode and you will have a secondary mode when you get into that sort of situation. So the moral of the story is, when you're communicating with other people, if you want to understand them, if you want them to understand you, if you want to influence or persuade them, don't follow the golden rule of treat others the way you want to be treated. Follow the rule that says treat others the way they want to be treated. So that's the message I'd like to share with you today. Thank you.
That was like a good refresher course.